The next horror story is about sharing with competitors. This person wanted to stay anonymous, and their story is we had a first call with a third tier investor. I'd love to know how they're classifying those tiers earlier in the day, and then they requested a follow up call at 10 p.m. On the second call, the partner and associate invited a portfolio company slash competitor without telling us. They asked us to go through the demo again and describe our technical approach to various problems. They claimed they were looking for synergies, using quotes. We told them no, of course. Painfully awkward, received a generic rejection email the next day. So, Yanev, what should you do if either in the room or through back channel you suspect that the VC you're talking to is funneling information to someone in their portfolio, especially a competitor in their portfolio?
Goodness. So this is a tough one, actually. First of all, for those of you listening, if you've not watched the TV series Silicon Valley, you must go watch it. It is a satire, and like all good satires, it's actually based on an extremely strong foundation in reality. And I think it's in season 2 they go through this, and they call it getting brain raped. And this is exactly what's going on here, right? Which is basically they are just pumping you for useful information for their own portfolio. The reason I'm hesitating in answering this in really black and white terms is I think there is a reality that it's worth as founders being aware of and accepting to a certain extent, which is that investors share information with each other and often information that they shouldn't quite be sharing, right? It's part of the sort of the network of favors that investors do for each other, where one investor might say, oh, I've got a deck for a company that's competing with someone in your portfolio. Would you like to have a look at it so that you get a better sense of the competitive landscape and so on? So I think there are shades of gray here. First of all, let's go back to the concept that your idea is cheap. Your pitch deck, your idea of what you're trying to build, there's likely nothing in there that is going to give your competitors a significant advantage, right? You're saying, hey, here's my idea, here's how I'm going to approach it. Like your competitors have probably thought of that too. There's no like unique IP in your pitch deck that you should really be all that worried about. But then there is more trade secret type information. And this is where you should simply have your guard up and ask yourself, why is my investor so interested in this? But if there's an investor that you're pitching, there is give and take here. They shouldn't be asking for information they don't need to analyze this stuff. And they sure as hell shouldn't have anyone in the room who is not part of the investment committee. So I think this horror story is kind of funny because it was just so grotesquely obvious and over the line. But I think the interesting takeaway from this, Chris, is there are shades of gray and you should have your guard up and you should know which of your information is actually valuable to competitors and which information you should just not worry about and accept that it's going to be shared.
Yeah, this is a difficult one because you're right, Yanev, that ideas are worthless and your instincts and your intuitions about how you're going to go execute and how you're thinking about things are likely to change and pivot. And so you want to not hold those things too dearly. And this is one of the reasons why investors don't sign NDAs because they see a lot of deals, many that might be similar to yours, and they can't be accused of something they haven't done. Now, on the other side,
Mhm.
though, these investors need to act ethically, right? They shouldn't be funneling wholesale stuff to competitors, especially competitors in other portfolios. I think there is a line where you might give a portfolio company a heads up about something, but actively reaching out and passing on your deck to other investors for their portfolio feels like crossing a line to me. What will
Mm.
happen in Silicon Valley, at least, is you may, as part of their vetting process, be introduced to founders who are in the same space as you. Maybe even you might perceive them as a competitor, but they're actually focused on a different persona, a different part of the problem, and what have you. And the investor will send you there to ask that founder to vet you, to ask, like, hey, what do you think about this in someone in the space who thinks deeply about this? And I've been sent many a founder to talk to, and I've been asked to do reference checks on many a startup. And so that's actually not too uncommon. But you don't want to, as you said, Yanev, be giving them like in depth trade secrets. You just want to be talking about the concepts at a high level. And then the final thing is connected to what I just said, which is the world is very, very big. In Silicon Valley, it's not unheard of for two, three, four people in the same category of startup. Like you might even say, like three people building foundation models in AI for a sake of argument, OpenAI and Anthropic and Facebook. It's not unheard of for these guys to talk to each other and actually
Mhm.
share some insights and what have you, because they
Mhm.
know that they're specializing and they're focused on different things. And so the world is seen in the valley as abundant. There's like, 7 billion people in the world, and you're not going to go take the whole market. This feels less true in second and third tier markets like in Australia, like in New Zealand, like a small European country. But it is fundamentally true that you have to believe in the abundance in the world. So just to put a button on this, VCs have to act ethically, and they should not be sharing proprietary, private, and sensitive data with their portfolio and with their other VCs. Whiffs of information, rumors of information definitely permeate, but you need to be focused on your own momentum and trajectory rather than trying to protect everything jealously.
I think that's actually the bigger takeaway. VCs have an obligation to act ethically. They won't always do so unless they are completely blatant about it. Like in the case of this story, you will never know whether or not they acted ethically. But for the most part, just don't worry about it. Again, your ideas are cheap. Even certain information about like your trajectory or your runway or your customer acquisition costs, they have some value. But let me tell you, like being paranoid is far more of a distraction than that information leaking is a competitive threat to you. So, to a close approximation, unless you have real trade secret source stuff, 11 herbs and spices, chill. That would be my kind of takeaway from that.
And just one last point. The worst part of this is if they're a direct competitor clearly going after the same space and they were sitting in the room with you during your complete and thorough pitch, that does definitely feel weird and unusual. But the pretense is the thing that gets me is like they're looking for synergies, right? You guys have heard me talk about partnerships before. Partnerships tend to suck in the early stages. Most of them just suck. Distribution partnerships as well as synergistic technical partnerships and whatever the hell else. If a VC is saying, I'm going to pass you one of these guys to vet you, I want to hear their opinion about the space, that's one thing. The other is like, our investing in you is dependent on a synergy with some other company. That idea is a little distracting. Investing in you shouldn't be dependent on a synergy with one specific other company. That feels a little bit missing the point.